The morning sun on Mars cast long shadows across the training grounds as Ji-won Park checked her equipment for the third time. She was nervous, though she tried not to show it. Around her, the other cadets were doing the same thing, fumbling with straps and checking their weapons with uncertain hands. They had only been at the Terran Military Academy for 3 months, and this was their first off-world exercise. Minho Kim sat on a bench nearby, eating a protein bar and looking completely relaxed. He had grown up on one of the farming colonies, and nothing seemed to bother him much. Yuna Lee was hunched over her tablet, reading through the mission brief again. She always did that, reading everything 2 or 3 times. Daeho Choi was stretching his arms, rolling his shoulders like he was preparing for a sports match instead of a military drill. Sora Han stood apart from the group, staring at the transport ship with a frown on her face. Sergeant Hyunwoo Nam walked across the grounds toward them, his boots crunching on the red dirt. He was a tough instructor, but fair. Most of the cadets respected him, even when he made them run extra laps for being late to formation. He stopped in front of Ji-won and looked at the assembled squad. "Listen up," he said, his voice carrying across the training ground. "This is a basic reconnaissance and defensive positioning drill. You will be dropped on training ground Theta 7, which is a small asteroid in the belt. Your job is simple. Set up a base camp, establish a perimeter, and hold position for 3 days. We will be monitoring you the entire time. This is not combat. This is not dangerous. This is just to see if you can follow basic procedures without someone holding your hand." Minho raised his hand. "Sergeant, what if we run into problems?" "What kind of problems could you possibly run into on an empty asteroid?" Nam replied, "There is nothing there. No atmosphere, no life, no other personnel. Just rocks and your equipment. If you cannot handle 3 days on an empty rock, you should not be in this academy." Some of the cadets laughed nervously. Ji-won did not laugh. Something about this felt off, though she could not explain what it was. She had learned to trust her instincts in training. Her father had been a soldier, and he always said that the feeling in your gut was worth paying attention to. The sergeant continued his briefing. "Your weapons are loaded with simulation rounds. Your armor is training grade. You have 3 days of rations, water recyclers, and standard communication equipment. The transport will drop you off and return in 72 hours. Any questions?" Yuna raised her hand. "What if the communications equipment fails?" "It will not fail," Nam said. "But if it does, stick to the mission plan. We will come get you in 3 days regardless. The whole point of this exercise is to see if you can operate independently. Do not expect us to come running every time you have a small problem." Daeho grinned. "Sounds easy enough." "Easy is what gets soldiers killed," Nam said sharply. "Treat every drill like real combat. Treat every exercise like your life depends on it. Because one day it will." The sergeant dismissed them, and the squad gathered their gear. They walked up the ramp into the transport ship, their boots echoing on the metal floor. Inside, they strapped themselves into the drop pod seats. The pod was cramped, designed to fit 6 people in combat armor with all their equipment. It smelled like metal and recycled ergot as the transport lifted off. Minho looked around at the others. "So, who wants to bet we get dropped in the wrong location and have to walk 10 kilometers to the actual drill site?" "That happened to 2nd Squad last month," Sora said. "They failed the exercise because they spent the whole first day just finding the right coordinates." "We will not fail," Ji-won said firmly. She was the squad leader, and that meant she was responsible for all of them. "We follow the plan. We work together. We complete the mission." Yuna was still reading her tablet. "According to the mission specs, Theta 7 is only about 3 kilometers in diameter. Low gravity, no atmosphere, Surface temperature varies between -150 and -180 Celsius. Standard asteroid composition, mostly iron and nickel with some silicate rock formations. You memorized all that? Daho asked. I like to be prepared, Yuna replied. The journey took 4 hours. The cadets tried to sleep, but most of them were too nervous. This was their first time actually leaving Mars since arriving at the Academy. When the transport finally reached the asteroid belt, they felt the ship slow down and begin its approach. Drop zone in 5 minutes, the pilot announced over the intercom. Good luck, cadets. They checked their suits one more time, making sure the seals were tight. Space was unforgiving. One small mistake could kill you. Ji-Wan ran through the checklist in her head. Helmet secure, oxygen flowing, suit pressure normal, weapon secured, equipment pack attached. The drop pod detached from the transport with a loud clang. For a moment they were in free fall, and Sora looked like she might be sick. Then the pod's thrusters fired, slowing their descent. They could feel the gentle bump as the pod touched down on the asteroid's surface. Here we go, Minho said. The pod door opened with a hiss, and they stepped out onto the surface of Theta 7. The asteroid was exactly as boring as the briefing had described. Gray rock stretched in every direction, pockmarked with small craters. Above them, stars filled the sky, brighter than anything they ever saw on Mars or Earth. In the distance, they could see a ridge line and what looked like the entrance to some caves. Let us set up camp in that crater, Ji-Wan said, pointing to a depression about 200 meters away. It will give us some protection and a good view of the surrounding area. The squad moved carefully in the low gravity, each step sending them higher than expected. It took practice to walk properly. They reached the crater and began unpacking their equipment. Yuna set up the communication array, while Daho and Mingho assembled the temporary shelter. Sora established the perimeter sensors, small devices that would alert them if anything moved within 500 meters. Ji-Wan tried to contact the transport ship. Static filled her helmet. She adjusted the frequency and tried again. More static. She looked at Yuna. The communications are not working, Ji-Wan said. Yuna frowned and checked the equipment. That is strange. Everything looks functional. Maybe there is some interference from the asteroid's composition. Can you fix it? I can try, but it might take a few hours. Ji-Wan considered their options. The sergeant had said communications might fail. He had also said to stick to the mission plan regardless. They were supposed to be learning to operate independently. Maybe this was part of the test. All right, Ji-Wan decided. We proceed with the exercise. Yuna, keep working on the communications when you can. Everyone else, standard rotation. 4-hour watches, 2 people on guard at all times. We are here for 3 days, so pace yourselves. As the sun set on the distant Mars, casting the asteroid into darkness, the cadets settled into their routine. They had done this dozens of times in training. Set up camp, establish watches, maintain equipment, stay alert. It was boring work, but that was military life. Most of the time got around midnight by their chronometers. Sora was on watch with Daho. She was looking at the perimeter sensor display when something caught her attention. Daho, she said quietly. The sensors are picking up movement. Probably just a malfunction, Daho said. There is nothing alive out here. Multiple contacts, Sora continued, her voice rising. At least 20, approaching from the north ridge. Daho looked at the display. His relaxed expression vanished. Wake everyone up, now. Ji-Wan was awake instantly when Daho shook her shoulder. Years of training had taught her to go from sleep to alert in seconds. She grabbed her helmet and sealed it while Daho quickly explained what Sora had seen on the sensors. Beside her, Minho and Yuna were also gearing up, moving fast but not panicking. "It is probably training drones," Ji-won said, though she did not sound convinced. "The sergeant said this was a basic drill. Maybe they are testing our response time." 20 drones seems like a lot, Yuna said, pulling up the sensor data on her tablet. "And they are moving in a coordinated pattern. Very organized." Minho checked his weapon, a standard training rifle, loaded with simulation rounds that would register hits on training armor, but could not actually hurt anyone. "Should we take defensive positions?" "Yes," Ji-won decided. "Treat this like a real scenario. Everyone to the perimeter. Sora, you take the high ground on the crater rim. You have the best shooting scores. Minho and Daeho cover the left and right approaches. Yuna, stay with the equipment and keep trying to get communications working. I need to report this." They moved to their positions quickly. The low gravity made it easier to climb up the crater walls, but also made it harder to stay stable. Sora positioned herself behind a large rock that gave her a clear view of the approaching contacts. Through her rifle scope, she could see movement on the ridgeline. Then she saw them clearly, and her blood went cold. "Ji-won," she said over the squad radio, trying to keep her voice steady. "Those are not drones." "What do you mean?" Ji-won asked. "I mean, those are living beings. Alien beings. And they have weapons." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Daeho laughed nervously. "That is not funny, Sora. This is a training drill." "I am not joking," Sora insisted. "Look for yourself." Ji-won pulled out her binoculars and focused on the ridge. What she saw made her stomach drop. The figures were tall, maybe 2 meters high, covered in what looked like insectoid armor that gleamed dully in the starlight. They moved on 4 legs, with 2 arms holding weapons that definitely were not human-made. There were at least 30 of them now, spreading out in what looked like an attack formation. "What are those?" Minho whispered. Yuna was frantically typing on her tablet, searching the database. Insectoid appearance, 4 legs, 2 arms, high mobility. "I think those are Vecturi. They are a mercenary species, known for raiding and military operations." "What are they doing here?" Daeho asked. "This is supposed to be an empty asteroid." "I do not think they know we are here," Ji-won said, watching the aliens through her binoculars. "They are not in combat formation yet. They are just patrolling." Sora's voice came through the radio, tight with fear. "Ji-won, one of them is looking this way with something, like a scanner or binoculars." "Everyone stay still," Ji-won ordered. "Maybe they will not see us." They waited, barely breathing. Ji-won could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. This was not supposed to happen. This was a training drill on an empty asteroid. There should not be aliens here. There should not be anyone here. The alien with the scanner stopped moving. It turned its body toward the crater where the cadets were hiding. Then it raised one arm and made a gesture. The other aliens immediately changed formation, spreading out and moving faster toward the crater. "They see us," Sora said. "Nobody fire," Ji-won commanded. "We have training rounds. They will not do anything to real armor." The aliens reached the crater rim. One of them, bigger than the others with more elaborate armor, made a series of clicking sounds. The universal translator in Ji-won's suit tried to interpret it, but only produced broken phrases. "Human presence ... unauthorized ... Eliminate intruders." Then the big alien raised its weapon and fired. The plasma bolt hit the ground 3 meters from Minho's position, melting rock and sending up a spray of molten droplets. The heat was intense even through his suit. "Contact!" Minho shouted. "They are shooting real weapons. Return fire." Ji-won ordered, dropping her concerns about this being a drill. Survival was more important than following training protocols. The cadets opened fire with their simulation rounds. The projectiles bounced harmlessly off the alien armor, leaving small marks but doing no damage. The aliens responded with more plasma fire. A bolt caught the edge of Minho's shoulder, melting through the outer layer of his training armor. He screamed and rolled behind a rock. Training armor cannot stop plasma. Yuna shouted, "We need to retreat." "Where?" Daho asked, firing uselessly at the advancing aliens. "They have us surrounded." Ji-Wan's mind raced. They were in a crater with aliens on the rim, firing down at them. The shelter was already on fire from a plasma hit. Their weapons were useless. They were going to die here, killed in what was supposed to be a simple training exercise. Then she remembered the caves they had seen when they first landed. The caves! She shouted. "Everyone fall back to the cave system. Move now." Sora provided covering fire, even though her rounds did nothing. The noise and flashing lights made the aliens hesitate for just a moment. It was enough. The squad ran in low-gravity bounds toward the cave entrance, plasma bolts burning the ground around them. Daho grabbed Minho, who was clutching his burned shoulder, and half-carried him. They reached the cave entrance and dove inside just as a plasma bolt melted the rock where Ji-Wan had been standing a second before. The cave was dark and cold, but it was shelter. They moved deeper inside, using their helmet lights to see. "Keep moving," Ji-Wan ordered. "We need distance between us and them." The cave system was larger than it looked from outside. Tunnels branched in different directions, some natural and some that looked almost artificial. After running for 5 minutes, they reached a larger chamber and stopped to catch their breath. Minho collapsed against the wall, holding his shoulder. Yuna immediately went to check the injury. The plasma had melted through the outer armor layer and burned the insulation underneath, but Minho's actual skin was only slightly burned. He had been incredibly lucky. "We need to contact the academy," Sora said. "Tell them what is happening here." "Communications are still not working," Yuna reported, looking at her portable unit. "Something is jamming the signal, and it is not natural interference." Ji-Wan looked around the chamber with her light. That was when she saw them. Equipment crates, power generators, weapons racks. This chamber was not natural. It was a storage facility. "They have been using this asteroid as a base," she said slowly. "That is why communications were jammed. That is why Theta 7 was supposed to be empty for our drill. Intelligence did not know the Vecturi were here." Daho walked over to one of the weapons racks. Real weapons, not training equipment. Military-grade rifles, plasma sidearms, and things he did not even recognize. "Are we allowed to use these?" "The sergeant said we have training weapons, because this is a drill," Yuna said. "Using real weapons without authorization is against regulations. Those things outside are trying to kill us with real weapons," Minho said through gritted teeth. "I think regulations do not matter right now." Ji-Wan made a decision. Her father had told her that sometimes officers had to make hard choices. Sometimes following the rules would get people killed. We use whatever we need to survive. If we live through this, they can punish me later. Everyone take real weapons and as much ammunition as you can carry. They quickly armed themselves. The weapons were heavier than their training rifles, but they felt solid and real. Ji-Wan also found equipment lockers with better armor. It was not made for humans, but they could wear it over their training suits. Yuna discovered a computer terminal in the corner of the chamber. She connected her tablet and started pulling data. This is definitely a Vecturi forward operating base. According to these logs, they have been here for 3 weeks. They are planning to use this location for raids on human shipping lanes. How many of them are there? Ji-Wan asked. Yuna scrolled through the data. The logs mention a company strength unit. That means between 40 and 50 soldiers. 40 to 50? Daiho repeated. There are 5 of us. Sora checked her new weapon, a plasma rifle that felt wrong in her hands but was better than nothing. So what do? We cannot fight that many. We cannot call for help. And they know we are in these caves. Ji-wan looked at her squad. They were scared, hurt, and way out of their depth. They were kids playing soldier who had stumbled into a real military situation. But they were alive, and she intended to keep them that way. We do what we were trained to do, she said. We establish a defensive position. We use the terrain to our advantage. We make them pay for every meter they advance. And we hold out until the transport comes back in 3 days. 3 days, Minho said weakly. We have to survive 3 days against 40 alien mercenaries. Yes, Ji-wan said simply. So we better get to work. The Vecthory soldiers entered the cave system 6 hours after the cadets had taken shelter. They moved confidently, expecting to find 5 frightened younglings hiding in the dark. What they found instead was a carefully prepared kill zone. Minho had spent those 6 hours setting traps. Growing up on a farming colony, he knew about pest control and predator deterrence. He took that knowledge and combined it with his military training and the Vecthory equipment he found in the storage chamber. Training minds, too weak to really hurt anyone, were wired to alien power cells that definitely were not weak. Tripwires crossed the tunnel at ankle height for a 4-legged creature. Unstable rock formations had small charges placed at their bases. The first Vecthory squad of 8 soldiers walked into the tunnel. They were relaxed, talking to each other in their clicking language. Then the lead soldier tripped the wire. The explosion brought down half the tunnel ceiling. 3 aliens were buried instantly. 2 more were caught in the secondary blast from a power cell. The remaining 3 tried to retreat, only to trigger another trap that sealed the tunnel behind them with fallen rock. In the command chamber deeper in the cave system, Ji-wan heard the explosion and checked the sensors they had set up. First trap triggered, multiple enemy casualties. They are going to be more careful now, Yuna said. She was sitting at the computer terminal, headphones on, listening to the Vecthory communications that she had hacked into. Their commander is angry. He is ordering the soldiers to advance slowly and check for traps. Good, Ji-wan said. Slow is what we want. Every hour we delay them is 1 hour closer to rescue. Daiho was at the tunnel entrance to their command chamber, watching the approaches. How long until they reach us? Depends on how careful they are, Minho said, wincing as he adjusted the bandage on his shoulder. I set 15 more traps in different tunnels. Some are real, some are fake. They will not know which is which. Sora was lying prone at a different tunnel entrance, her plasma rifle aimed down a long straight section of cave. Her terrible eyesight did not matter anymore. The plasma rifle had a smart scope that automatically adjusted for distance and movement. I have movement at tunnel 3. 2 contacts, moving very slow. Let them get closer, Ji-wan ordered. Wait until they commit. They waited in silence. The Vecthory soldiers advanced meter by meter, checking every surface for traps. They found 2 of Minho's devices and carefully disarmed them. They avoided a pitfall covered with a thin layer of ice. They were learning. Then they reached the position Sora had sighted on. She took a breath, steadied her aim, and fired. The plasma bolt caught the first alien in the chest, burning through its armor. The soldier fell. Before the second one could react, Sora fired again. Another hit. Contact down, Sora reported, her voice shaking slightly. 2 confirmed kills. It was the first time any of them had killed another living being. They had trained for it, talked about it, practiced on targets and simulations. But this was real. The aliens were dead because of them. Stay focused, Ji-wan said, seeing the look on Sora's face. They were trying to kill us first. This is survival. The battle continued for hours. The Vectory would probe one tunnel, encounter resistance, and pull back. Then they would try another approach. Each time, the cadets made them pay. Minho's traps claimed more victims. Sora's accurate fire dropped aliens who thought they were in safe positions. Daiho held a narrow tunnel against 3 soldiers using just his rifle and a borrowed combat knife when they got too close. Yuna proved to be their most valuable asset. She sat at the computer terminal and became the squad's eyes and ears. She listened to enemy communications and warned the others about incoming attacks. She sent false orders through the Vectory network, directing squads into ambushes or away from the cadets' actual positions. She learned the names and ranks of the enemy commanders and used that information to cause confusion. Squad 7 moved to Tunnel Entrance 4. She would broadcast in a copied Vectory voice pattern. Squad 7 would move, only to find nothing there and waste precious time. But the cadets were also paying a price. Exhaustion was setting in. They had been awake for over 24 hours with only brief rest periods. Their supplies of food and water were limited. Minho's shoulder was getting worse, despite Yuna's attempts at first aid. They were running low on ammunition for the weapons they had taken. Worst of all, the Vectory were adapting. They stopped falling for the false orders after the 3rd time. They began to map the cave system carefully, identifying all the positions where the humans might be hiding. They brought in heavier weapons that could penetrate the rock walls dot in the command chamber. Jiwan looked at her exhausted squad. Sora was asleep in a corner, her rifle clutched against her chest. Daiho was eating a ration bar with the mechanical movements of someone too tired to taste it. Minho was trying not to show how much pain he was in. Yuna was still at the computer, her eyes red from staring at screens for hours. "We have held them for 18 hours, Jiwan said quietly. "That is 18 hours they did not expect us to last. We are doing better than anyone could have hoped. But we cannot hold for 3 more days, Daiho said. We are out of traps. We are almost out of ammunition. And there are still at least 30 of them alive." Yuna pulled off her headphones. "I have been listening to their command channel. The commander, his name is Krilther, is very angry. He is being mocked by his officers because he cannot defeat 5 human children. It is hurting his reputation." "Good," Minho said. "I hope we are giving him nightmares." "There is something else," Yuna continued. "I have been analyzing their communication patterns and comparing them to the cultural database. The Vectory have very strict military protocols. If the command structure is compromised, the lower ranks are supposed to stop fighting and wait for new orders." Jiwan sat up straighter. "What does that mean?" "It means if we can capture or kill Krilther and his senior officers, the rest of the soldiers might stop attacking us." Sora woke up at the sound of voices. "That is crazy. How are we supposed to capture their commander? They are out there, and we are in here. Unless we make them come to us," Jiwan said slowly, an idea forming in her mind. "Yuna, can you fake a message from their commander?" "I have been doing it for hours," Yuna said. "What do you need?" "Make them think we have something valuable. Something that would make Krilther come personally to investigate." Yuna thought for a moment, then smiled. "Their supply logs show they were expecting a weapons shipment. What if we let them think we found it and are planning to destroy it?" "Would he fall for that?" Daiho asked. "He might," Yuna said. "These weapons would be valuable. And he is already angry and embarrassed. Angry people make mistakes." Over the next 4 hours, they prepared. Yuna sent carefully crafted false messages, making it seem like the humans had discovered a hidden weapons cache and were rigging it with explosives. She made sure the messages were intercepted by Vectory intelligence, as if the humans did not know they were being listened to. Meanwhile, the others prepared the trap. They chose a chamber with only 2 entrances, both of which could be collapsed with the remaining explosives. They scattered empty crates to look like they contained weapons. They positioned themselves in hidden alcoves where they could not be seen from the entrances. "This is going to go wrong," Sora said nervously. "Plans always go wrong." "Then we adapt," G1 replied. "That is what we have been doing for the last day. We are still alive because we adapt." They waited in the dark. Minutes felt like hours. G1 checked her rifle for the 10th time, making sure it was ready. Beside her, Daiho cracked his knuckles, a nervous habit he had when preparing for combat. Then they heard movement. Footsteps, many of them, coming from both entrances. Yuna held up her tablet, showing the thermal signatures. 15 contacts. More than they had hoped for. The Vecthory entered the chamber in a professional formation, weapons raised, checking corners and ceiling. In the middle of the group was a larger figure with more elaborate armor. Krillthur.G1 waited until they were all inside. Until the commander was deep in the chamber, examining the fake weapons crates. Then she gave the signal. Minho triggered the explosives at both entrances. The tunnels collapsed with a roar of falling rock. The Vecthory spun around in confusion. Daiho charged from his hiding spot and physically tackled one of the officers, using his superior weight in the low gravity to knock the alien down. Sora and G1 opened fire, aiming for legs and weapons to disable rather than kill. In the chaos and dust, with aliens shouting and weapons firing, the cadets fought like demons. The fight in the collapsed chamber lasted 4 minutes, though it felt like hours to the cadets. When the dust finally settled, 15 Vecthory soldiers were on the ground. Some were dead, killed in the fighting. Most were injured or simply overwhelmed by the sudden, brutal attack. Krillthur himself had been hit by a plasma bolt from Sora's rifle and lay on the ground with his leg armor melted. G1 stood in the center of the chamber. Breathing hard, her rifle pointed at the alien commander. Around her, the other cadets secured weapons and checked the injured aliens. Daiho had a cut on his arm from close combat. Minho had reopened his shoulder wound. But they were alive, and they had captured the enemy command element. "Yuna," G1 said, "tell them to surrender. Tell them we will kill them if they fight." Yuna activated her translator and spoke in halting Vecthory phrases. The device did its best to convert her words into the clicking language of the aliens. Some of the soldiers hissed in what might have been anger or fear. Krillthur spoke, his words translated by Yuna's device. "You are human younglings, training cadets. Your armor markings show this. Yet you fight like seasoned warriors." "We fight like people who want to live," G1 replied through the translator. "Your soldiers attacked us first." "This is Vecthory territory," Krillthur said. "You are the invaders here." "This is an asteroid in neutral space," G1 countered. "You are the ones operating illegally. We were conducting a training exercise. We did not even know you were here until you tried to kill us." Krillthur made a sound that the translator marked as confusion. He looked at the cadets more carefully, seeing their mismatched armor, their exhausted faces, their training insignia. "You speak truth. This was not a planned military operation." "No," G1 said. "It was terrible luck for both of us." Outside the collapsed chamber, they could hear sounds of movement. The remaining Vecthory forces were gathering, trying to determine what had happened to their commander. Yuna pulled up the sensor readings on her tablet. 25 soldiers outside, she reported. "They are surrounding this position." Sora looked at the collapsed entrances. "We are trapped in here with the prisoners, and they are trapped out there with no commander." "This is bad," Daiho said. "Even if we hold them off, we will run out of air eventually. These suits are not meant for long-term use in sealed chambers." Minho sat down heavily against the wall. We beat 40 alien mercenaries for a day and a half, just to die in a hole. My father is going to be so disappointed." Ji-Wan's mind raced. They had captured the command staff, but now they were besieged. The Vecturi outside would not leave without their commander. The cadets could not escape. It was a stalemate that would end badly for everyone. "Yuna," she said, "can you contact the soldiers outside? I can try to use the Vecturi communication system." "Do it. Tell them we want to negotiate." Yuna worked on her tablet for several minutes, then spoke into the captured communication device. There was a long pause before a response came back. She listened, then translated. "The senior officer outside is named Vector. He says he will listen, but promises nothing." Ji-Wan walked to the collapsed entrance and raised her voice. "Vector, my name is Cadet Ji-Wan Park of the Terran Military Academy. We are holding Commander Krilther and 14 other officers. We do not want more fighting. We want to leave this asteroid alive." Yuna translated, and they waited for a response. When it came, the voice sounded aggressive and threatening. Yuna's face went pale as she translated. "He says if we harm the commander, they will dig through the rock and kill us slowly. He says we cannot escape. Tell him this," Ji-Wan said carefully, trying to think like the negotiation instructors had taught them. "We are leaving this asteroid. Your soldiers will not follow us or attack us. When we are safely away, we will release your officers. This is our offer." Yuna translated. There was a longer pause this time. Then Vector responded with what sounded like a question. Yuna frowned at her translator. "He is asking. I think he is asking if those are our surrender terms?" "Surrender terms?" Ji-Wan repeated. "No, we are not surrendering. We are telling them what we need for us to leave peacefully." "I will try to clarify," Yuna said, speaking again into the device. But something was going wrong with the translation. The Vecturi language was complex, with multiple meanings depending on context and inflection. The cadets did not know that in Vecturi military culture, the victorious side traditionally dictates terms to the defeated. They did not know that offering to spare the lives of captured officers was a great honor. They did not know that Ji-Wan's simple statement of intent was being interpreted as a formal declaration of victory. Vector's response was long and formal. Yuna struggled to translate it, her frown deepening. "He says, he acknowledges our dominance in battle. He says we have proven ourselves worthy opponents despite our youth. He says..." She paused, reading her screen again. "He says he accepts our surrender terms on behalf of all Vecturi forces present." "Wait," Deo said. "Did he just surrender to us?" "I think so," Yuna said uncertainly. "The cultural database says that when a Vecturi force is defeated, they follow very specific protocols. The surviving senior officer accepts terms from the victor and orders all soldiers to comply." Ji-Wan looked at Krilther, who was listening to the exchange. The alien commander spoke, and Yuna translated. "You defeated us in fair combat. You captured our command structure. You offered honorable terms. By our traditions, we have surrendered. But we are just trying to survive," Ji-Wan protested. "We do not want your surrender. We just want to go home." Krilther made the confusion sound again. "You are the victors. We are the defeated. This is clear. Why do you deny this?" Sora started laughing. It began as a small giggle, then grew into full hysteria. Within seconds, all 5 cadets were laughing. The stress and exhaustion and sheer absurdity of the situation overwhelming them. They were surrounded by alien prisoners who thought they had surrendered to the cadets, while other aliens outside were waiting to formally surrender to 5 kids who just wanted to pass their training exercise. Minho laughed so hard he had to hold his injured shoulder. "We accidentally won a war. This is insane." Daiho said between laughs. Sergeant Nan is going to kill us. Ji-won wiped tears from her eyes and tried to compose herself. She looked at Krulther, who was watching the humans with obvious confusion. Commander, I think there has been a cultural misunderstanding. But if you are truly surrendering, then I accept on behalf of the Terran Military Academy. She had no idea if she had the authority to accept a military surrender. She was pretty sure she did not. But the alternative was to keep fighting, and they had no chance of winning if the battle continued. If Vivecthory wanted to surrender, based on some cultural tradition she did not understand, she would take it. Krulther spoke formally. Then it is done. You will treat my soldiers with honor, and we will comply with your orders. Yuna, tell Vector to have his soldiers disarm and assemble in... Where should they assemble? The original storage chamber? Minho suggested. It is big enough. Yuna transmitted the orders. Through the walls, they could hear movement as the Vectory soldiers began to comply. It took an hour to clear the collapsed entrance enough for people to move through. When Ji-won finally emerged with her squad and the captured officers, she saw a sight she would never forget. 20-5 Vectory soldiers stood in formation in the storage chamber, their weapons stacked in neat piles at the side of the room. They stood at attention, waiting for orders from the human cadets who had somehow defeated them. Vector approached and made a formal gesture that Yuna's translator indicated was a military salute. The Vectory forces on Training Ground Theta 7 are now under your command, Cadet Ji-won Park. Ji-won looked at her squad. Sora was staring at the aliens with wide eyes. Daiho looked like he might start laughing again. Minho was swaying on his feet from exhaustion. Yuna just shrugged, as if to say, this might as well happen. Right, Ji-won said. Everyone sit down. We are going to wait here for our transport to arrive. In about 48 hours. It was going to be a very long 2 days. The rescue ships arrived exactly 72 hours after the cadets had been deployed, just as scheduled. Sergeant Hyun-woo Nam stood in the command transport, looking at the tactical displays with growing concern. The training ground communications had been jammed for 3 days. Nobody had heard from the cadets since they landed. Standard procedure was to complete the pickup regardless, but Nam had a bad feeling about this mission. Prepare medical teams, he ordered. If they survived whatever caused the jamming, they are probably injured. The transport descended toward the asteroid surface. Through the viewports, Nam could see the original landing zone. The drop pod was there, but the cadets' camp was destroyed. Scorch marks indicated weapons fire. Real weapons, not training equipment. Get me a full Marine squad, Nam said quietly. Combat ready. The transport landed, and Nam led 20 Marines down the ramp, weapons raised, expecting anything. What they found was nothing. The surface of the asteroid was empty except for evidence of a battle. Plasma burns, collapsed rock, scattered equipment. Sir? One of the Marines called out. The cave entrance. I am detecting power sources inside. Multiple life signs. Nam's stomach tightened. How many? At least 30. Maybe more. 30 hostiles against one squad of cadets. Nam did not want to think about what that meant. He led the Marines toward the cave entrance, ready for combat. As they entered the darkness, they activated their helmet lights and moved carefully through the tunnels. Evidence of fighting was everywhere. Collapsed tunnels, blast marks, improvised traps. The cadets had put up a fight, at least. Nam felt pride mixed with grief. They had been good kids, and they reached the storage chamber, and Nam stopped so suddenly that the Marine behind him nearly ran into him. The chamber was full of Vectory soldiers. Dozens of them, all in formation, all watching the entrance. And in the center of the room, sitting on equipment crates like they were having a picnic, were 5 human cadets. Ji-won saw the sergeant and jumped to her feet. Sergeant Nam. You are here for pickup, right? Nam could not speak for several seconds. He looked at the cadets, then at the aliens, then back at the cadets. Cadet Park, report. Sir, we encountered enemy forces during our training exercise. After engaging them for approximately 36 hours, we captured their command staff and accepted their surrender. We have been holding them here awaiting transport. You what? We accepted their surrender, sir, Ji-won repeated. They are prisoners of war. One of the Vecturi, a large one with officer markings, stepped forward. The Marines raised their weapons, but the alien made a peaceful gesture. It spoke in its clicking language, and a translation device converted the words. I am Commander Krilther. My forces surrendered honorably to these human warriors after they defeated us in battle. We await transport to appropriate prisoner facilities. Nam looked at his cadets again. They were exhausted, dirty, and injured. Minho had his arm in an improvised sling. Sora had a bandage around her head. But they were alive. All 5 of them. Someone explained this to me slowly, Nam said, over the next hour, while the Marines secured the area and verified that the Vecturi were actually surrendering peacefully. The cadets told their story. Yuna showed the sensor logs and communication intercepts. Minho demonstrated the trap designs he had created. Sora pulled up the targeting data from her rifle scope. Daeho simply held up his damaged armor and said, they shot. First, Nam listened to it all with the expression of a man who had stopped being, surprised after the first 5 minutes, and had moved on to accepting that reality made no sense anymore. Let me be clear, he said when they finished. You 5 cadets, who have been in the academy for 3 months, fought a company of Vecturi mercenaries for a day and a half, captured their command staff, and forced them to surrender through a combination of guerrilla tactics and cultural misunderstanding. Yes, sir, Ji-won said. Is that a problem? Is that a... Nam stopped and took a deep breath. Cadet Park, I am not sure whether to give you a medal or put you in detention for the rest of your life. Can we decide after I sleep for 20 hours? Minho asked. The transport ships arrived throughout the afternoon. Medical teams treated the cadets and the injured Vecturi. Intelligence officers began interviewing everyone, trying to piece together exactly what had happened. Krilther and his soldiers were formally processed as prisoners of war, the first aliens ever captured by human training cadets. News of the incident spread through military channels within hours. By the time the ships returned to Mars, the story had become legend. News agencies were requesting interviews. Military analysts were studying the cadets' tactics. The Vecturi were confirming to anyone who would listen that yes, they had been defeated fairly by human younglings, and yes, it was extremely embarrassing. Ji-won and her squad were brought before the Academy Commandant, a stern woman named General Yoonji Kwon. They stood at attention in her office, still wearing their damaged armor, while she read the incident reports. This is the most irregular situation I have encountered in 30 years of military service, the general said. You engaged in unauthorized combat. You used weapons you were not cleared for. You violated at least a dozen safety protocols. Yes, ma'am, Ji-won said. We are ready to accept punishment. You also, the general continued, displayed exceptional tactical thinking, adaptation under pressure, and an unwillingness to give up even when facing impossible odds. You survived a situation that would have killed experienced soldiers. And somehow, you turned a disaster into a strategic victory. The cadets said nothing, unsure where this was going. General Kwon stood up and walked around her desk. The Vecturi are spreading word throughout the galaxy about what happened here. 5 human cadets defeated a mercenary company. Do you understand what that means? That people will think we got lucky? Sora suggested. That people will think humanity is terrifying, the general corrected. If our children in training can defeat veteran alien soldiers, what can our actual military do? You have changed how other species see us. Whether you meant to or not, you have sent a message to the galaxy. We were just trying not to die, Deho said quietly. And that, General Quan said, is exactly what makes humans dangerous. We do not give up. We adapt. We survive. The Vecthory learned that lesson the hard way. She returned to her desk and pulled out 5 medals. You are hereby promoted to junior officer candidates. Your training period is considered complete, and you are being awarded the Star of Valor for combat action above and beyond the call of duty. Minho raised his hand slightly. Does this mean we pass the training exercise? Despite everything, the general smiled. Yes, Cadet Kim, you passed. The ceremony 3 days later was covered by news agencies from a dozen worlds. The 5 cadets stood on a stage in their dress uniforms, uncomfortable with the attention, while the general pinned medals on their chests. In the audience were other cadets, instructors, and a section reserved for the Vecthory prisoners, who had requested to attend as a matter of honor. When Krilther was asked by a reporter why his experienced soldiers lost to human cadets, he answered simply, "We thought we were fighting children. We learned too late that all humans are warriors. Some just have not been tested yet." The cadets were offered positions as instructors, helping to train the next class. They accepted, partly because it was an honor, and partly because they were too tired to think of anything else. Their first lesson to the new cadets was simple. Training is not just about following rules, Jiwan told the assembled class. It is about learning to think, learning to adapt, learning to survive when everything goes wrong. Because eventually, everything will go wrong. Minho added, and when it does, you do not give up. You do not panic. You figure out what you have. You figure out what you need, and you make it work. Yuna explained how she had hacked alien systems with just a tablet and determination. Sora demonstrated how to make impossible shots with unfamiliar weapons. Deho taught close-quarters combat techniques. He had learned the hard way. The new cadets listened with a mixture of awe and skepticism. These 5 people had become legends. Surely the stories were exaggerated. Surely they were just normal people who got lucky. Then Sergeant Nam walked in and addressed the class. I know you have heard stories. I know some of you think they are not true. I was there for the pickup. I saw the aftermath. I interviewed the prisoners. Every word of it is true. These 5 cadets did what experienced soldiers might not have survived. Learn from them. As the new cadets filed out for their next training session, Chi-Wan and her squad stood together, watching them go. Do you think they understand? Sora asked. I hope they never have to, Minho said. 1 accidental war per academy class is probably enough. They laughed, the easy laugh of people who had survived something terrible together and came out stronger for it. Above them, ships were departing Mars, carrying soldiers and supplies to outposts across human space. Among the cargo were new training protocols based on what 5 cadets had done on an asteroid when everything went wrong. The galaxy had learned that humans were not to be underestimated. Even their children could be dangerous when pushed, especially their children, who had not yet learned that some things were supposed to be impossible.